The flames roared like a beast, devouring everything in their path. Inside the burning building, firefighter Mark Thompson was trapped. Smoke choked the air, and the heat was unbearable. His radio crackled with static. No one could reach him. But as the fire closed in, a shadow moved through the chaos. It was Max, Mark's retired K9 partner. Max hadn't been on duty for years. His days of chasing down suspects and sniffing out danger were long behind him. But when the fire broke out, something inside him snapped. He bolted toward the building, ignoring the shouts of the crew. What happened next was nothing short of miraculous. Max found Mark, guided him through the smoke, and led him to safety. But the cost of that rescue was something no one could have predicted. This is a story of a bond that defied the odds, and a final act of loyalty that will leave you in tears. Mark Thompson first met Max in 2010 during a training program for K9 units. Max, a German shepherd with piercing amber eyes, was one of the most disciplined dogs in the program. But it wasn't just his skills that stood out, it was his intelligence and unwavering focus. Mark knew right away that Max was special. Their partnership began with rigorous training. Max was trained in search and rescue, as well as detecting accelerants use in arson cases. Mark spent countless hours working with him, building trust and understanding. The bond they formed wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. Max wasn't just a dog. He was Mark's companion, his confidant, and his protector. Over the years, they faced countless challenges together. There was a time Max sniffed out a hidden gas leak in a collapsed building, saving an entire family. Or the time he tracked down an arsonist who had been terrorizing the community. Each mission brought them closer, and Mark often joked that Max could read his mind. But it wasn't just the big moments that defined their relationship. It was the quiet ones too. The nights when Max would curl up next to Mark after a long shift, or the way he'd nudge Mark's hand when he sensed his partner was stressed. Max wasn't just a working dog. He was family. In 2018, Max retired. His body wasn't as agile as it once was, and the years of service had taken their toll. Mark made the difficult decision to let him rest, but it wasn't easy. Max had been by his side through everything. The triumphs, the losses, the sleepless nights. Letting go felt like losing a part of himself. Still, Max adjusted to retirement. He spent his days lounging in the backyard, chasing squirrels, and enjoying the simple pleasures of life. But Mark could tell he missed the action. There were times when Max would perk up at the sound of a siren, his ears twitching as if he were ready to spring into action. Mark often wondered if Max still remembered the old days. The answer came on that fateful day in 2025, when a massive fire broke out at an industrial complex. Mark was one of the first responders, and he didn't think twice about rushing in. But as the flames grew more intense, he found himself trapped, and that's when Max showed up. It was a crisp autumn morning when the cold came in. A fire had broken out at an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. Flames were visible from miles away, and thick black smoke billowed into the sky. Mark and his team suited up immediately, knowing this wasn't going to be an easy battle. As they arrived at the scene, the chaos was overwhelming. Firefighters were scrambling to contain the blaze, while paramedics tended to the injured. The heat was intense, even from a distance, and the roar of the flames was deafening. Mark could feel the adrenaline pumping through his veins as he grabbed his gear and joined the fight. The warehouse was a maze of crumbling walls and unstable structures. Mark's team was tasked with searching for survivors, but the conditions were treacherous. The fire was spreading rapidly, and the smoke made it nearly impossible to see. Still, Mark pressed on, determined to do his job. It happened in an instant. One moment, Mark was moving through a hallway, calling out for anyone who might be trapped. The next, a section of the ceiling collapsed, blocking his path. He tried to radio for help, but the signal was lost in the chaos. He was trapped, with flames closing in on all sides. Back at the command post, the team realized Mark was missing. Panic set in as they tried to locate him, but the fire was too intense. Time was running out, and hope was fading. That's when Max showed up. No one had noticed him at first. He had been at home, lounging in the backyard as usual. But when the fire trucks roared past, something inside him stirred. Without hesitation, Max bolted out of the yard and followed the scent of smoke. By the time he reached the scene, the situation was dire. The firefighters were too focused on the blaze to notice the retired K9 weaving through the chaos. But Max knew exactly where he was going. He could sense Mark's presence, even through the smoke and flames. With a determination that defied his age, Max charged into the burning building. He navigated the crumbling structure with ease, his instincts guiding him every step of the way. When he finally found Mark, the firefighter was slumped against a wall, struggling to breathe. Max didn't hesitate. He grabbed Mark's jacket with his teeth and tugged, urging him to move. At first, Mark was too disoriented to understand what was happening. But as he looked into Max's eyes, he realized his old partner had come to save him. Together, they made their way through the burning building. Max led the way, his sharp senses cutting through the smoke. It was a race against time, but they didn't stop, not until they reached the safety of the outside world. The moment Max burst through the flames to reach Mark, it was as if time stood still. The firefighter, disoriented and struggling to breathe, couldn't believe his eyes. Max, his retired K9 partner, was there, right in the heart of the inferno. The dog's amber eyes locked onto Mark's, filled with a determination that transcended words. Max barked sharply, tugging at Mark's jacket with his teeth. It was a command, a plea. Move. Now. Mark, though weak and overwhelmed, trusted Max implicitly. He forced himself to his feet, leaning on the dog for support. Together, they began their desperate journey through the burning building. The smoke was thicker now, a suffocating blanket that made every breath a struggle. Flames licked at the walls, and the sound of collapsing beams echoed around them. But Max was unwavering. His instincts, honed over years of service, guided him through the chaos. He led Mark down narrow hallways, around fallen debris, and through gaps in the wreckage that seemed impossible to navigate. At one point, the path ahead was completely blocked by a wall of flames. Mark hesitated, his heart sinking, but Max didn't falter. He darted to the side, finding a narrow opening that Mark hadn't noticed. The dog barked again, urging his partner to follow. Mark crouched low, shielding his face from the heat, and crawled through the gap. As they moved, Mark could feel his strength fading. The smoke was taking its toll, and his vision was blurring. But Max was relentless. He kept tugging, barking, and nudging, refusing to let Mark give up. It was as if the dog knew that stopping meant certain death, and he wasn't about to let that happen. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached a broken window on the ground floor. Fresh air rushed in, a stark contrast to the suffocating heat inside. Max barked again, pushing Mark toward the opening. With the loss of his strength, Mark climbed through, collapsing onto the ground outside. The firefighters outside were stunned. They had been working tirelessly to contain the blaze, but they hadn't expected to see Mark emerge, let alone with Max by his side. Paramedics rushed over, immediately tending to Mark as he gasped for air. But Max wasn't done yet. As the paramedics worked on Mark, the dog stayed close, his eyes never leaving his partner. Even in his exhaustion, Mark reached out to Max, his hand trembling as he stroked the dog's fur. "You saved me," he whispered, his voice barely audible. It was then that the toll of the rescue became clear. Max, though seemingly unharmed, was breathing heavily. His body, once strong and agile, was now frail from age and exertion. But there was no regret in his eyes, only a quiet sense of fulfillment. As the fire raged on, Mark was rushed to the hospital. Max was taken to a nearby vet for a checkup, but the dog's condition was more serious than anyone realized. The strain of the rescue had been too much for his aging body. That night, as Mark lay in his hospital bed, he received the news. Max had passed away peacefully, surrounded by the people who loved him. It was a devastating blow, but Mark knew the truth. Max had given his life to save him. It was the ultimate act of loyalty, a final gift from a partner who had always been there when it mattered most. The days that followed the fire were a blur for Mark. Physically, he was recovering. His lungs were healing from the smoke inhalation, and the burns on his hands were slowly fading. But emotionally, he was shattered. The loss of Max weighed heavily on him, a void that nothing could fill. The fire had been one of the worst in the city's history, and the community was reeling. But amidst the devastation, there was one story that captured everyone's attention: the heroic rescue by Max, the retired K9. News outlets picked up the story, and soon it was everywhere. Headlines praised Max as a hero, and people from all over shared their admiration for the dog's bravery. For Mark, the attention was bittersweet. He was proud of Max, of course, but every tribute, every story, was a reminder of what he had lost. He couldn't bring himself to read the articles or watch the news segments. Instead, he focused on the memories, the years they had spent together, the bond they had shared. The fire department held a memorial service for Maximum. It was a somber occasion, but also a celebration of his life. Firefighters from across the city came to pay their respects, sharing stories of Max's incredible career. Mark stood at the front, his heart heavy as he listened to the tributes. When it was his turn to speak, he struggled to find the words. Max wasn't just a dog, he began, his voice trembling. He was my partner, my friend, my family. He saved my life more times than I can count, not just in the line of duty, but in the quiet moments too. He was there when I needed him most, and I'll never forget that. As he spoke, Mark felt a surge of emotion. He looked out at the crowd, seeing the faces of his colleagues, his friends, his community. They were all there because of Max, because of the impact he had made on their lives. And in that moment, Mark realized that Max's legacy would live on. The service ended with a final salute to Maximum. The firefighters lined up, their hands raised in a gesture of respect. It was a powerful moment, a testament to the bond between humans and animals and the sacrifices they make for one another. In the weeks that followed, Mark began to heal. He returned to work, though it wasn't the same without Max by his side. But he found solace in the memories and in the knowledge that Max had died doing what he loved, protecting the people he cared about. The community rallied around Mark, offering their support and gratitude. A local artist painted a mural of Max on the side of the fire station, and a scholarship fund was established in his name to support K9 units. It was a fitting tribute to a dog who had given so much. For Mark, the pain of losing Max would never fully go away, but he found comfort in the legacy his partner had left behind. Max had shown him the true meaning of loyalty, courage, and love, lessons that would stay with him for the rest of his life. Years passed, but Max's memory never faded. The mural on the fire station became a landmark, a symbol of courage and sacrifice. Children would point to it as they walked by, and parents would tell them the story of the brave K9 who saved his partner's life. Max had become more than just a dog. He was a legend. For Mark, life went on, but it was never the same. He continued his work as a firefighter, driven by the lessons Max had taught him. To never give up, to always put others first, and to face every challenge with courage. He often visited Max's grave, bringing flowers and sharing updates about his life. It was a small gesture, but it helped him feel connected to his old friend. In time, Mark took on a new K9 partner, a young German shepherd named Ace. Training Ace reminded him of the early days with Max, and though it was bittersweet, it also brought him a sense of purpose. He knew Max would have approved. After all, Max had always been about moving forward, no matter the odds. The scholarship fund in Max's name flourished, providing resources and training for K9 units across the country. It was a fitting tribute to a dog who had dedicated his life to serving others, and it ensured that Max's legacy would continue to inspire future generations. As Mark stood before the mural one evening, he felt a sense of peace. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the image of Maximum. It was as if the dog was watching over him, just as he had done in life. "Thank you, Max," Mark whispered, his voice barely audible, "for everything." In that moment, he knew that Max's spirit would always be with him, in the quiet moments, in the face of danger, and in the bonds he shared with those around him. Max had taught him that true heroism wasn't about strength or skill. It was about love, loyalty, and the willingness to give everything for someone else. And so, Max's story lived on, not just in the mural, or the scholarship, or the memories of those who knew him, but in the hearts of everyone who heard his tale. He was more than a hero. He was a reminder of the best in all of us.